What's happening, everybody out there in listener slash viewer land? Appreciate you joining us here on InsideCarolina.com. Another episode of the Coast to Coast podcast. This is one of your regularly scheduled installments of the Coast to Coast on the Inside Carolina network of podcasts. We've been doing some breaking news, I guess, knee jerk or emergency or instant reaction pods recently because there's been so much happening around the Carolina basketball program. But this is one of your regularly scheduled on our calendars, planning on being here episodes. So we appreciate you guys being here. Appreciate you downloading. Appreciate you listening wherever you're getting your content from. Thank you for doing it. I would ask again, please take a second, stop, rate, review us. If you have not already followed or subscribed, make that happen. That way you get this content already to your device and it's ready for you whenever you are prepared to consume it. I am just Joey Powell. With me, as always, on this episode of the Coast to Coast, these guys have been burning the midnight oil, working the clock so hard that it's broken more than twice a day. Broken more than twice a day? It's actually right less than twice a day because they've broken it so hard because they're working so hard. All right, yeah, strike that, reverse it, switch it. You know what I mean. Sherrell McMillan, Sean Moran, boys, how are you?
Doing well.
Yeah, real. How you living, man?
Glad to be back in North Carolina. No disrespect to Alabama, but glad to be back home.
Hey, look, any barbecue that has white sauce is not barbecue, and that state can go straight to hell.
Okay, so I tried it. I went to there's a place right across from the hotel called Full Moon Barbecue.
Okay.
And I tried it, and I was kind of like, I didn't know what it was. It was like bad ranch. It had a very strange. It was like a really strange taste. So I did try it because all the signs are like, "Oh, try the Alabama white sauce. Try the white sauce." So I did, and I was disappointed.
The only white sauce I want anything to do with is the sauce that you get at the hibachi place that you can absolutely load on a plate at hibachi. Sean, I'm not asking you about barbecue because you're in California, which means all y'all eat is like tofu Q or something like that. But I'm showing my culinary myopicness here. Myopicness, yeah. I'm all over the place right now, but I appreciate you guys being here. Sean, maybe we'll allow you to speak to barbecue if you know of a great place in California later in the show. I'm not comfortable with that right now. Sherrell, as you mentioned, man, you have been a man about the world, at least all over the Southeast, burning up the Gulf Coast area. Tell us what you did this weekend. Where were you? Who did you see? And just kind of give our listeners and viewers a little bit of a synopsis as to what went down in your world this weekend.
Yes. So we were in Atlanta. There were 3 tournaments in Atlanta. So there's one called Best of the South, which had actually about 500 AAU teams. I didn't know there were 500 AAU teams total, but there were a couple of high-level teams in that event that we wanted to see. Then there was the Under Armour event, and that was in downtown Atlanta. There was the Under Armour event, which was in Emerson, which is kind of North Atlanta, I guess you would call it. And then there was another one called Elite 32 that I didn't make it to in McEachern High School. So all 3 of those events had pretty high-level players. And so coaches had to kind of navigate how to get through Atlanta traffic at certain times of day to get, to different spots. So we were there for that. And then I think probably around Thursday, the Jalen Washington thing kind of became official, or we kind of knew about it. So we made a plan to go to Birmingham because we wanted to talk to him immediately. So we were in Atlanta Thursday and Friday most of the day, drove to Birmingham Friday night, and then we're in Birmingham Saturday and Sunday. So that was kind of our schedule. And in Birmingham, there were 2 tournaments. One is just the regular Adidas event, and then another one called the Platform, which I guess kind of lured some of the EYBL and other circuit teams down there because all the EYBL teams are heading to Augusta.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of a tune-up for everybody to be in the Southeast. We'll talk about him later, but Seth Trimble's team was at Best of the South in Atlanta. He's from Wisconsin. Again, just a chance to warm up as they head to Augusta. So that was kind of the lay of the land. And we saw a lot of guys, and we followed the UNC coaches and saw who they watched, for some parts of it. And I would say it was a success. We got to see each of UNC's 3 commitments at least twice. We got to see Isaac Trout, kind of like a game and a half, basically. And then we got to see some other targets, Tyler Nickel, who was on the Adidas circuit. We got to see some younger kids. So I think it was a fairly productive trip in helping us, see Carolina's targets and learn more about them.
And listen, if folks that are viewing or listening to this right now are not Inside Carolina premium subscribers, I'm going to go ahead and plug that. But I'm also judging you a little bit because when I say that Sherrell and Ben and the entire writing staff put in work this weekend, if you saw this write up that they had starting on Thursday, going through the end of the weekend about each individual player and move and prospect, it's exhausting, but it's also the top level of what our subscribers have come to expect from the coverage of UNC sports. And I just want to tip a cap to Rel and Ben and all of the writers who contributed to that this weekend because it was top notch stuff. So make sure you go check that. It's a great recap starting from Thursday on the premium message boards. If you're not a subscriber, make that change. I think the deal was like $1 or something. I saw you can get like a subscription for $1. If you can find $1 in the top of your penny loafers nowadays, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. But give me 3 takeaways that you had this weekend, Sherrell.
I think the first would be it was the first time seeing all these guys in person. I was really impressed with Seth Trimble. We watched the game where he played Anthony Black, someone who UNC watched a lot this weekend. So we're kind of on alert, with him. Could he get an offer? He's a 6'7" guard, also in the class of 2022. And it was a big game for Trimble's team, Phenom, because they lost to this team. I think it's called 3D Empire. I forget the name exactly what it is, but they lost to them in May. And, they're a pretty good team out of Texas. And it was just interesting to see Trimble kind of attack and learn and figure out, throughout the game, when to pick his spots, when to kind of be the point guard, the floor general, and when to really attack. And going into this stuff, you read scouting reports and you look at video, but it is just different being there. And one of the things I thought maybe had been exaggerated was people were saying, oh, well, he can get in lane whenever he wants. That's just kind of something you say for like somebody who's quick in a scouting report when you don't really know what to say sometimes. Like, it's just like, oh, he can get into the lane whenever he wants. But Trimble can get into the lane whenever he wants. I mean, he proved it time and time again against good defenders. I mean, it's pretty incredible because with his athleticism, when he can get past you, there's really nothing you can do. Now, what the team playing him tried to do in this particular game was foul him. And I think that brings us to the next point about Trimble is that he's such a tough kid and he's built so well to only be 16. He doesn't turn 17 until August. And he's just built like a running back. We were talking offline about how if you put pads on him, people would be like, wow, this dude is massive. But because he's a basketball player, you just don't really see it.
Right.
But he takes so much contact and gets up every single time. And the game we watched him, I think he hit 10 of 11 free throws. So when you start projecting that out into how Hubert Davis has said he wants to play, when you have a point guard who can break down defenders and create space for open shooters and himself, I mean, that's what you're looking for. That's kind of the template, I would guess, for how he wants to play. So it confirmed kind of what I had seen on video, and I was really, really impressed. Travis Branham, 24/7 Sports, national recruiting analyst, was at the game as well, and he came away impressed too. It was just a good performance by Trimble. The rest of the weekend, they kind of hung out a little bit. They're trying not to get hurt or play too much before Peach Jam, but you could really tell that game was the one they had circled and they played like it was, a real game. So that's number one.
All right.
Number two, I'll be quicker. Number two was just Jalen Washington finally getting a chance to watch him in person. Same thing, the tournament he was at, it wasn't the tournament where he was at was a warm-up tournament. So they didn't want him playing too much. So he played very limited minutes. But in the limited minutes, we saw what Sean is talking about, that top of the key pull up three off pick and roll. I mean, that was there over and over again. And then we saw the length. The defenders, when he was the primary defender, it was very hard for people to score, especially this team they were playing wasn't very great. Both games weren't very great. So to me, that was a revelation.
Let me stop you real quick on that point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we've talked about it here yet, but Sean, I'm gonna drop this to you as well because you've been sitting patiently as we've diagnosed Sherrell's weekend. Do you guys think? And Sean, I'm gonna go to you first. Do you think Washington actually can translate that skill set into being the absolute, I don't know, perfect fit for a secondary break that is going through my mind right now, because I feel like that skill set makes him an absolute just pinnacle of a weapon for the way UNC uses their bigs in that secondary break. Sean, do you feel like that's okay? Or am I just getting way too carried away here?
Well, first off, I think we'd all rather hear about Sherrell's weekend, just given he was watching live hoops and getting to watch some of those guys. So I can keep listening as long as he wants to go. But in terms of that, I think we're gonna maybe talk about this later, but maybe I'll just jump in right now, and we'll have a video coming out on Washington from some of his June play, and one of the in the 3-point shooting area, one of them is all of a sudden you see this play being set up, and all of a sudden he is comes as a trailer. They hit, they pass it to him top of the key, and he knocks it down. So I definitely think that is that is an area. And as once again, right now he's, I think, already a pretty decent 3-point shooter. And as he continues to get more comfortable and continue to fine tune that, yeah, I definitely think him trailing on the break or trailing in terms of the half court set and setting up from the 3-point line will be a feature. And then once you get into the actions, where I think right now he's most comfortable 15 to 18 feet and him kind of facing. But yeah, I think that's, that's how Hubert and the team will look to utilize him. And I think especially when you're talking 6'9" and that type of length, it definitely adds another feature and benefit to the offense.
Sherrell, you've watched a lot of Carolina basketball in your day, and you've seen obviously more of these recruits than than most people. I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Sean. Do you feel like he can plug and play into that secondary break as much as people might want him to?
Yeah, 100%. If Hubert runs it the same way,
Right.
we still don't know that. If he does, then yeah, I think you saw last year players in that position, and they just were either scared to take the shot or were told not to take the shot. And I think that'll be different if it is the same system next year, because, I mean, it looks like it's such a rhythm shot for him. It looks so easy. It looks like a free throw, just top of the key, coming down, catching it off pick and roll, catching off second. It was simple for him, and he really excels at that. I mean, I'm not, he's a good shooter. He's a really good shooter. I'm not just saying that because he committed to UNC or anything. Like, I think he's a legitimate shooter, and not like, oh, he's a big guy, he can kind of shoot, legitimate shooter. Like, no, he's a legitimate
Well,
shooter.
you both have said, you and Sean have both been pretty adamant about that on the show before. So
Yeah.
I don't think you're seeing this through Carolina Blue tinted glasses. All right, your
All
third
right.
takeaway from the weekend. I'm sorry I totally derailed you, but I
Oh
want to
no,
make sure
it's
we got into that a little bit.
it's fine. So 3A, 3B, and they'll be shorter. So 3A is that Isaac Trout, I think, is probably higher or maybe the top remaining target for UNC.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason I say that is because of the coverage that they gave him. Perhaps it was a geographic thing, because Sean May started off in Birmingham at the Adidas tournament, and Brad Frederick was in Atlanta with Hubert Davis that first night. So they were at all of Trout's games except for the first one, and that was only because they were watching Seth Trimble. Any other time, he had at least one coach, most of the time two UNC coaches at his game. So I think they wanted to be very visible for him. I don't know if he is the next decision to come, but I think they want to make sure that he sees him there. And then 3B
Mm-hmm.
would be that all the guys that UNC is recruiting, obviously they are, rising seniors in the 2022 class, but I saw a lack of strength from all of them. And I mean, that you expect that from guys heading into their senior year, but I don't know. They all seem like they really, really need to hit the weight room. None of them are great rebounders, I would say. So that's just something to think about, especially with the Shaver Washington combo. Neither one right now are I would say competent rebounders. That's something they have to work on and get stronger and get bigger. So just, when you talk about expectations for those two entering their freshman year, they could have a situation where they play a lot, or they could have a situation where their minutes are more tapered. So either way, that's an area of improvement for really all of the big guys that I've seen Carolina is recruiting, is just get stronger and become better rebounders.
That's something I think a lot of people may not give enough credence to when you're thinking about a blue chip prospect coming in from high school to college, is that so much rebounding is lower body strength. And I don't know how many kids, even at the elite level, have lower body strength or take the time to work on it, because they're working on so much other stuff. But as we've seen, specifically with guys that come into the North Carolina program, that Jonas Serration is just an absolute mad genius, getting these kids in the weight room, chaining them to a squat rack, and doing the things that actually help get them not only some mobility but some lower body strength. That way they can rebound with the top flight bigs in the ACC. All right, Sean, Sherrell teased this a little bit, and I want to come to you with it. Speaking of who might be left with UNC's offers that are still out on the board. We'll get to that in a second. But what do you feel like? And when I say the roster, I mean not 21, 22, the kids that have committed so far. So you're talking Trimble, Shaver, Washington. What else does UNC need to add to that class to have the most well-rounded or best polished roster that they would like to have when the season starts in 22?
It's a great question, and one that they're trying to figure out right now. But obviously, as we've seen this year with transfers, you can plug some holes as they come due. But I do think Sherrell mentioned Trout, and I think he is. We talk about Washington being able to stretch the floor. We've said it before. I think he's more of a stretch five than a stretch four versus Trout, who I think is a stretch four, and he is a guy that I think can attack off the dribble from the 3-point line. But once again, is a guy that can shoot it. So I think, just given right now you're looking at 3 bigs plus McCoy, and we'll see if any, obviously Manic will be gone after that year. And you're kind of assuming that Baycott Garcia, their goal is to, get to the next level. So I do think, once again, 2 bigs with Shaver and Washington, but you add the stretch 4, and then you have your point guard locked down with Trimble, and then you're looking at the team, with RJ, you have Dunn, you have Harris, so you kind of have the wing, but I would still love to see kind of a dynamic score, and could that be Whitmore? They recently offered Zion Cruz. I think that one might be more of a longer reach, but we'll see how things go. So I would say the stretch 4, and then kind of that wing that can just really light up the score, scoring book. So those are the 2 positions of focus.
And they'll still have Dontrez Style still on the roster then too. So, but I hear you. Like he will kind of be it as far as the slashing.
And he's a guy that can play the stretch 4, and can attack and slash, but once again, I'd say the jury is still out on the shooting for him for right now. And we'll see how that is this year.
So Sherrell, who's left, right? We've talked about so many of the dominoes have already fallen, and we're barely midway through July. We expected things to pick up quickly, especially once these players were allowed to come back on campus for visits. Who is left on the UNC radar right now? I think Sean just did a great job of laying out what the gaps in the roster will be that they're trying to plug in right now. But you mentioned a couple earlier. Do you want to reset those for our listeners?
Yeah, so they have quite a few offers still out. Whether or not those are realistic, I'll leave to the readers and listeners. But Cal Filipowski is one. He's a stretch 4. Derek Lively, I would call a forward/center, is still out there, and UNC watched both of those guys this weekend. Zion Cruz, you mentioned him. He's a combo guard. Ken Whitmore, Hubert Davis has told him he was kind of a 2-3. I think the jury's out on that. Some people think he's a 3-4. So he's a 2 through 4 guy if you want to do positionless basketball. Tyler Nickel is out there. He's kind of that same deal. Hubert Davis told him he was kind of a 2-3. I think he's more of a 2 through 4 in positionless basketball. And then there are some other offers that maybe they're not quite as far on, but I would say that's kind of the core group that they are focusing on right now. And I wouldn't put it past them, honestly, based upon what they've done already, to see them expand the recruiting board even more. They've shown a really aggressive mentality to try and make sure that they are covered no matter what. So if someone is taking a little bit longer than they like, they'll say, okay, that's fine. We still want you, but we're going to go and look at somebody else just to make sure, because if you go to a school we don't want to be kind of shorthanded. So we're going to keep expanding our board. So that's what I'm looking for over the next couple of weeks to see if that board expansion continues, because if not, then that tells me that maybe they have a little confidence in, a few of their current targets.
That I'm glad you went there. My next question was going to be how much of this is, the staff trying to apply pressure on current targets versus how much of it is them legitimately seeing players that they're like, okay, we're going to put a body here regardless of who takes it first. So I appreciate you
Yeah,
clarifying that for us.
I think it's one gives to the other. It's they find guys that they really like, and because those guys play similar positions as players they've already offered, then that automatically applies pressure. I don't think they go into it wanting to apply pressure necessarily, but an indirect consequence of liking those guys is pressure. So I think it works together.
Yeah, and definitely, like you were saying, seeing who the staff is spending their time around over this past weekend, but then the next couple of weekends is going to be very telling as to, like you said, how they feel about current offered prospects and whether or not they matriculate to Chapel Hill or not. All right, press pause, fellas. Want to take a break to shout out our friends up at Johnny T-Shirt, johnnytshirt.com, online, the best place for you to find anything and everything related to UNC sports. If you need T-shirts, hats, if Zubaz pants were still a thing, Johnny T-shirt would have it. Matter of fact, they may have it. I don't know. Johnny T-shirt is that good. If you want Zubaz pants, reach out to Johnny T-shirt and see if they can get them for you. But they've got everything. They've already started to get the football stuff in. We're literally, I think, 6 more Saturdays until football starts, which makes my heart sing, makes my liver cringe. But yes, I'm happy about it one way or another. Johnny T-shirt is already starting to get the stuff in for the fall for football. So if you want the official sideline polos, hit them up. The same stuff the coaches are wearing, the same stuff the players are practicing in. Johnny T-shirt is your hookup. As you know, you've heard me say, you've heard Sherrell, you've heard Sean brag about it. But Inside Carolina, premium subscribers get that extra 10% off the top, off of every order, regardless of what Johnny T-shirt is selling. You can take that extra percent with it. So use that. So one of the many benefits you get of being a premium subscriber. Hit the premium message board, get that code, apply it to your order. Johnny T-shirt will take care of you. Check them out, johnnytshirt.com or on East Franklin Street in Chapel Hill. I'm telling you, you will be glad that you did. Also, going to take a little quick break to let the guys from the national scene drop some ads in here. We'll be right back to talk a little bit more about the current roster that the Tar Heels have, and then give you a little bit of a teaser about all the stuff that Inside Carolina is going to be dropping on you very soon. So stick around. We'll be right back. All right. Thanks for hanging out with us. We appreciate it. Listen to the Coast to Coast podcast on InsideCarolina.com. I'm just your host, Joey Powell, but with me, as always, the two guys you're here to listen to and see, Sherrell McMillan, Sean Moran, dropping the knowledge that you have become accustomed to taking in from them. All right, fellas, you've done a great job of kind of resetting the recruiting board for us. One of the emergency podcasts that we did recently was announcing Dawson Garcia's intent to transfer from Marquette. He has now signed with North Carolina. And as we were recording this today on July the 12th, he's going to be getting to campus. So he'll start working in with the current roster. I just want to ask both you guys, and Sean, I'm going to come to you first. What do you expect that these first couple of practices or these first couple of scrimmages, whether they're actual sanctioned practices or not, what do you think is going to be the biggest thing for this collection of guys that are on the roster right now to start working out as they're playing together?
I think first and foremost, especially with Garcia being added to the mix, because you've had Manick, you've had McCoy in the fold for a little while, is just kind of getting used to the personality and playing style of him, and Garcia getting used to that of everybody else on the floor. I think second off, it's going to provide some really good inter-squad competition. Obviously, there's always a lot of alums coming in, but I think one thing that'll be nice is just the depth. So the bigs can go against each other, and you can have a lot of positional battles, I think, with a lot of the talent that is on the team this year, especially with some of the newer incoming freshmen and Dunn and Styles, but also, the 3 transfers as well. So now all of a sudden there might be maybe some more competition than existed in the past. So I think, as the summer begins, it's just kind of, one, that interaction, but 2, how are the new players kind of working with some of the returners, Caleb Love, Armando, et cetera. So for me, those are the things to look at. And then once again, I think with Garcia, especially with Manic, once again, we kind of talk about it all the time. Now you have three, really, really good bigs that have spent, whether it's 1 year or 4 years starting. And how does that playing time get distributed? So I think everybody's expecting to come hopefully play for a national championship, which is great. But you saw it in the article today with Garcia. He has lofty personal goals as well, which you could probably replace Armando's name in that article as well. So I think that'll be the interesting thing, is just how does everybody mesh together, and how do the personal goals equal the team goals?
As you were talking there, Sean, something I was thinking about that we really need to see. I would love to see how some people feel about potential minute breakdowns for the roster next year. I'd swear the 32 threads that have been started by individual posters on the premium message boards are not quite enough. We need more people supposing what the minute breakdown might be out there. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I think it is a valid question. I think you alluded to it very gently there, Sean, but I do think watching how these minutes play out is going to be incredibly interesting, considering it's almost the exact opposite of what we, the three of us, suspected the roster may look like just 90 days ago. We were talking about, where is UNC going to find post players? And now all of a sudden they have a bevy, a plethora, a gang of really talented guys that can play the 4 and the 5. And I think, if nothing else, to use Sherrell McMillan's favorite phrase, iron sharpens iron. And you're going to have a lot of these guys, not Sherrell's favorite phrase, by the way, he hates that. But you're going to see a lot of these guys working and hopefully making each other better, because they all do have very unique skill sets. And while it's it's great to have all these problems, it is going to be neat to see how they play off each other. Sherrell, what's the first thing you think that Hubert Davis and his staff are going to try to work out once they get these guys on a practice floor together?
Yeah, so I do despise iron sharpens iron. I know it's biblical. You could use menagerie too, is another one over there.
Yes, nice, well done.
So I'm gonna answer your question in a different way. So I think something that they're gonna have to talk about is that, when Hubert Davis got the job and we were wondering about what the roster would look like and how competitive they would be,
Mm-hmm.
everybody kind of took a step back and said, okay, well, North Carolina is not going to be North Carolina next year because they're losing so much. They're going to have a first-year head coach, et cetera, et cetera. That was before we knew that Caleb Love was coming back, before we knew that Armando Bacot was coming back, before we knew that they would sign 3, kind of stretch bigs from the transfer portal. So when you start looking around college basketball, you're not going to find more than 4 or 5 teams more talented than North Carolina now. And I don't think that's homerific at all. I think that's absolutely the truth. And so I think what they're going to talk about is, hey, they've got a chance to do big things. It's not a rebuild year. It's not a year where everybody will be happy if, they beat Duke once and win a game in the ACC tournament and make it to the Sweet 16. Those aren't going to be the goals for this team, because just like last year, there is going to be pressure, because you expect, we said the same thing last year, but you expect some of these guys to go pro after next season. So this roster is going to be together for one season, and that's it. So I say all that to say, I think you go into practice now, if you're Hubert Davis, and say, hey, we're treating this like we had a chance to win a championship. There's going to be the building of the program and all that good stuff, but the goal number one is to win. And I think maybe that is a different message than we expected 3.5 months ago. There's always going to be pressure to play at North Carolina because it's North Carolina, and you expect that. But now when you add Garcia, I think it takes it up another level. And that brings me to like the talking point for me for the rest of the year, is that it's all in Caleb Love's hands now. I was talking to someone close to him recently, and they were like, yeah, it's him. He is, if he plays well, they're going to have a great season. If he doesn't, I don't know how good they'll be. And I think, that's maybe is overly simplistic, but I think kind of the idea rings true in that it's all about him. He's got to improve. He's got to be better. And if he plays better, they have a chance to be playing, the final, the first Monday in April or whatever it is. So that, I know that didn't answer your question specifically, but I think pressure and accepting, the chance that they have this season is something that they'll talk about as they start practice and as they continue workouts and head into practice in the fall.
I mean, having a chance to win now, I think is something that, it's a good thing to have veteran players on the roster. And so that now they can kind of say, hey, it's not 2 years away. Maybe our opportunity is right now. And like you said, this is the only chance that we're going to be this team, to borrow a Roy Williamsism. Uh, this team is only going to exist one time. And if nothing else, maybe the urgency will be baked in by having a new coaching staff. So who knows how that might play into things? But you're right. It is a very very intriguing development to watch, and seeing how they take these new expectations and this new reality that 90 days ago we were talking about who's going to be here to play, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, who's going to take, who's going to get the minutes, because there's so many guys here to play. All right. I want to start wrapping up this episode, and I think there's a lot coming up for our listeners and our subscribers. So I want to give you guys a chance to set that up for everybody. Sean, what do you have going on this weekend that's going to not only lead to some content? You mentioned your kind of deep dive on Jalen Washington's game. What else you got going on this weekend the folks can expect to hear about?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's attention will be on Peach Jam, which is where I would definitely love to be, but we'll be down in Dallas covering the Under Armour event. So we'll get to see Shaver as the kind of the main UNC commit, as well as Trout and some of the other potential guys that UNC is looking at. So that'll be my first in-person opportunity to view since probably February of 2020. So it'll be good, and at the same time trying to keep up with some of the live stream action going on at the Peach Jam, since that's going to be a lot of basketball wrapped into a little under a week or so.
Charge your devices, bro.
So yeah, we'll be down in Dallas. We'll be reporting on Shaver and then some of the other guys UNC is looking at, and once again seeing the majority of coaches will be at Peach Jam, but seeing which ones are coming over to Dallas for that one.
And the good thing is it actually is in Dallas. It's not somewhere like Sherrell was saying earlier. It's not one of these very incredibly remote places, so you can actually get to a decent airport and then get over to see these kids play. Sherrell, what do you got coming up this weekend that you wanna let everybody know about? It's not bad barbecue and white sauce, is it?
No, it's not.
Okay.
I'll be home.
Good
So
man.
the second, like Sean said, the second evaluation period is this weekend. It's Friday through Sunday. And it is more traditional than what last weekend was. Last weekend, I think the UNC staff went to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different tournaments in 3 different states. And so this time they're going to more than likely be at 3 tournaments in 3 states. So Adidas' circuit is in Omaha, Nebraska this weekend. As Sean said, Under Armour is in Dallas, and then Nike is in Augusta, Georgia. The vast majority of UNC's targets, 75, 80, 85% of them are in Augusta. So I would expect UNC to at least have minimum of 2 coaches there at pretty much all times, and maybe even more than that. That's something to look out for. It's just how much, like Sean said, Isaac Trout's very important to UNC. So how much attention do they give him when he's not at the main place that they're going to be? And it's going to be a lot easier for coaches too to just walk from court 1 to court 3 to court 2 to court 4, as opposed to flying from Georgia to New Jersey to Alabama back to Georgia, that kind of thing. So that's what our readers should look for this weekend. We're not going to cover it the way we did last weekend, just because it's not really possible. But we'll have a couple of things this week. We have an Inside the Commitment story with Seth Trimble that will be out this week, and then cross your fingers, and Inside the Commitment with Dawson Garcia that hopefully will be out this week as well. So those are a couple of things that will be published hopefully soon.
And if folks have not read the one that Sherrell did about the one he did about Shaver.
Will Shaver.
Yes, sorry, excuse me, a brain fart there. If you if folks have not read the Inside the Commitment that Sherrell did with Will Shaver, it's absolutely great. Gives you some really good insight as to what this new staff is saying to recruits and their families. Gives you a little bit of insight as to how they're motivating these kids and how motivated they are to have this opportunity. So check that out. Be sure you guys, especially premium subscribers, have already probably seen it, but check it out. Sherrell? Tease? What?
I'm having some technical difficulties.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. I got you.
Okay, sorry, I know it happened. So a tease in the Seth Trimble Inside the Commitment. the last paragraph, Carolina fans are gonna like jump through the roof, and I
Run
mean
through walls.
it is you. You talk about throwing red meat to your base. This is from Trevor Trimble, Seth Trimble's father, and it is a quote that I think is going to get blown up and like just used over and over. I mean, when he said it, I was like, "Are you sure I can use this?" He was like, "Yeah, you can use it." And I said, "You sure?" He's like, "Yeah." I said, "Because it's pretty intense." He's like, "I know." He's like, I'm pumped up and ready to go." And then he lets out like kind of a Ric Flair, woo kind of thing. Just be prepared for that, because I think fans are really going to gravitate towards that final paragraph.
And as we say in the business, that is in fact a tease. Well done, sir. And Sean, anything else you want to give a heads up about? You touched on your Washington expose briefly, but you want to dive into that a little bit, let folks know what they can expect to see?
Yeah, similar, to what we did with Manic and McCoy. There'll be a film piece coming out, so it'll focus on some of the June live period, so high school games. But we were able to kind of go through some of his offensive and defensive areas, and then just kind of break them down a little bit. So a lot of pros, but also some areas of improvement. So that'll be coming out this week as well.
All right. Well, we know you guys are always on your hashtag grind, and that does not stop now, especially since things have finally picked up after 18 months of COVID, finally getting back on the road and these teams actually getting back to regular competition. But I appreciate you guys dropping the knowledge that you always do, bringing in the info and the analysis and all of that goodness that we've come to expect from you. So thank you guys for being who you are, because you're good enough, you're smart enough, and doggone it, Inside Carolina likes you. But that's going to put a wrap on this week's show. This episode of the Coast to Coast podcast, as you know, is brought to you by Johnny T-Shirt, johnnytshirt.com. Special thanks to them. Special thanks to our man, John Siegley, producer extraordinaire on the ones and twos. He is the Timbaland to my Magoo in the production of podcasts. But we appreciate him being a part of this. And as always, for Sherrell McMillan and Sean Moran, I'm just Joey Powell. We appreciate you listening. Hope you check us out next time. We'll talk to you down the road. Late.